Hi, thank you, Danielle. Hi, everybody. I had Danielle and I were just kind of talking that it's wild that we were gonna all talk about this topic in December, and I'm excited. I feel like there's a lot has happened since December, so and not so much also. So I'm excited to kind of jump into it. I'm hoping that, in the first few minutes here, if you're comfortable, you might share in the chat a little bit. I'm curious about all your guys' licensure status, right? Like, are we mostly fully licensed folks, or do we have some limited license people with us today? So just kind of if you're comfortable sharing, please do. And I'm gonna, in the meantime, I'm gonna start out introducing myself. My name's Jordan Freeman. I'm the Workforce Program Manager, I think is my official title with NASW. It is a contract position that I started last, like, end of February, beginning of March. And I work on a lot of things. Workforce related, of course, licensure being a big one. Um, our, I guess my main focuses are licensure, supervision standards, and then reimbursement rates. So hopefully during my time, I'll be here at least for the next year. We'll keep talking about these topics. There's a lot to say and hopefully a lot to do um, related to them. I am clinically licensed, as you guys can see, which I think I that's not why I'm here today to talk about that hat, but I do like to kind of give some background when I do presentations that I have a private practice. I provide telehealth therapy. I started doing that right before COVID, and before that I worked in the hospital setting, and I did hospice when I first got out of school. So I've done a lot of things, and I love this role because it allows me, I say it allows me to use the other side of my brain, right? And to look at, I know what I'm doing clinically day to day, but then what's the bigger picture for all of us? Um, so that's a little bit about my background. I guess before we jump in, I'm also hoping that any questions you might have as we're going you can pop them in the chat. Gonna try not to talk too fast and give us too much time at the end, but I am hoping we'll have some time at the end if there's any questions or anything. Um, you guys, any thoughts that our conversation can provoke. All right. Oops. Go on. Oops. There we go. So I think Danielle's gonna pop this link for y'all in the chat. But I'm hoping you can help us get this conversation going by answering the question of, what do you think of when you think about the future of our work? Are you, you know, I think the name of this presentation really got me thinking for sure about, what is the future of our profession? What are we looking for or hoping for? Um, and in that, I some things that come to my mind, right, are um, things like manageable caseloads, evidence-based interventions, right, for everybody to use, meaningful change for clients and communities, access to care for our clients and ourselves, right? The idea that we also need, affordable health care and all that. Competent colleagues and leaders, like, that comes to my mind. And then fair compensation. Those are some of the things that come up for me. So I'm gonna make myself stop talking for a little bit and give you guys a chance to hopefully contribute to our word cloud. All right, allow me a couple seconds to fiddle with pulling up what our cloud looks like here. Time moves very slow when you're in Zoom, it feels like for me.
Very slow.
um,
And we're getting a couple folks who are responding in the chat section to Jordan that didn't put it in the or were not able to put it in the word cloud.
Perfect. I am going to really quickly add some of that in then, because I love it.
So if you're unable to click the word cloud link, feel free to put it in the chat. Or if you want to raise your hand and unmute and share something, we can capture it that way as well.
Yes. I love it. All right. This is great. Oh, and Michelle, I'm so sorry. I just am now seeing your question. What do you think about when you think of the future of our field, right? Just all right, and then I'm having a little bit of trouble getting to the cloud. So we might move on. I don't want to waste everybody's time. Yeah. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm gonna get us back. I'm gonna get us back on track with our presentation, and I'm gonna figure out that cloud towards the end because it's gonna be cool. Here we go. All right. All right. So here we go. So today's goals. So the idea of like workforce for the future, right? What does that look like? It's going to be nice to see the word cloud towards the end, I guess, after we've talked more. I'm going to review licensure modernization. I'm going to talk about supervision best practices, and then I am going to talk a little bit about the compact, as I don't think we can talk about the future without that. So, for anybody who hasn't been on some of my other talks about licensure, just a brief kind of background on why we're working on licensure modernization. Michigan has had licensure for just under 20 years, and we really haven't had any significant changes during that time. So it's, I think it's time to look at it. Part of all of this that has led to having this conversation, anti-racism and just calls within our profession that we know it's time to take a closer look at what path people really have to joining our profession and staying in our profession and being successful. And the clinical part of my brain also knows that that directly trickles down and impacts the populations that we serve, right? Um, and then, of course, workforce shortages. We're people are studying social work. They're trying to be social workers, and so what workforce shortages have definitely been top of a lot of people's mind, not just within our profession, but outside of it, and with the colleagues that we all work with. Um, so for anybody who's not super familiar, the current licensure process in Michigan, you apply for your limited license, you complete 4,000 hours of supervised work. If you're lucky enough to have a full-time position with a supervisor who can give you supervision right away, that can be done in about 2 years. And then you have to take the ASWB exam after those hours, which I know I think I got my full license in 2017, and at that time you could take the test anytime. When I finished school in 2014, they were like, go take the test. I did not take that advice. That was dumb, but that was kind of, for a lot of us, the path. And ASWB actually um determined that we had to enforce this idea that folks have to finish their hours of supervised work for first. So that change, at least being implemented in Michigan, happened within the last couple of years. And so I always like to I always like to remember that, because I know we are all looking at this through our lens of what our experience was becoming fully licensed folks, if we are. And it's important to remember the social workers now are having to wait. And so limited license renewal is capped at 6 years. So if you have to work for 2 years, minimum of 2 years before you can take the exam, that really gives you 4 years to pass it. And for folks who don't pass it, they have to wait 90 days. So like you can start to kind of do the math of how that 4 years can really disappear for folks who are struggling. So, I didn't want to dive too hard into the ASWB data today, but needs to be acknowledged. And I know, again, before I started this position, when I was working as just with my private practice, I didn't necessarily know the numbers. So, if you are not super familiar with this, but if this conversation makes you curious, their original data set from 2018 to 2021 is on their website. And then in 2023, so it came out just this past fall, there was like updated data from 2023. So, but in brief, that original data, Michigan clinical pass rate was 62.5%. And it went down in 2023, which for us, that's really interesting. It doesn't surprise me, but it went down after we made folks wait until after their supervision hours. It's also really interesting and good for all of our partners who are working on our bills, right? To see that, because I think some folks who aren't very close to it were curious. They thought maybe it would help to have folks finish their work. For repeat test takers, the rate fell in this 2023 data to 23.4%. That is so embarrassing. Like that is such a low rate. And I'm going to try not to get too much in on the soapbox here, so we can keep moving through, but that is not a people problem. That is definitely an exam problem at that point. And then I think it's important to highlight something that might not be surprising to you all, but most of our social workers who are taking the exam are taking the clinical exam. I think as we promote licensure for our profession, we want folks to have their macro license, but it's not it's not as common. A lot of times people can have really great macro social work careers without a license, right? So a lot of times folks don't go down that path. But for when we think about like workforce shortage, we're talking about clinical social workers, and most of the folks who are taking the exam, any exam, are clinical. So what we're doing, right? What our legislation is. And I apologize for anybody who's feeling like this is a review because you're already up to date on all this, but we did have some bills in 2024 that ended up not getting past the finish line with lame duck in December. But we are going to be reintroducing those bills for 2025. With that, there will be new bill numbers, and we're definitely putting our heads together internally and with our large collaborators and partners, the schools, CMH, like we have a lot of folks that are working alongside us. And so the bills are gonna be similar. So the bill's main tiers, right, are the idea of restructuring our licensure. So we would have the licensed bachelor social worker, the licensed master social worker, and then a licensed clinical social worker. And so for folks who um do private practice, I know that's when I kind of came to noticing that a lot of states, most states, have the licensed clinical social worker as your fully licensed like therapist or clinical social worker. And so with these tiers, a bachelor's or a master's social work student graduates, they apply for the LBSW or the LMSW. When a social worker would like to be a clinical social worker, they would do supervision hours and apply for that clinical social work license. So we'd if we get everything we want, we'd be getting rid of our limited license structure and making it a little bit more in line with other states. And so this would also be removing the ASWB exam and replacing it with an open book, more state-specific exam. These would be questions like instead of the gotcha questions that we see on the ASWB exam, these would be questions like, as a social worker in the state of Michigan working in a school, you are a mandated reporter, true or false? Now that's a super easy one. I don't know that, that's not coming off of a list I have, but the idea being that it would be questions that are related to like the work that we're doing here in Michigan and, um, you know, a little bit more black and white, more cut and dry. And we really did our research in looking at what would be a more equitable option. There's issues with standardized testing in general, so we know that. But Jen Hirsch actually did a study on a more equitable path to licensure, and she used the term jurisprudence, but the idea being this exam that is based on the state specific information and is open book. Um, every social worker would take and pass this exam to get their license at all. And the more I looked into it, the more I kind of got excited about that. I think these are the things that when I was a fresh social worker, or even now, you come up to something and you're like, wait a second, what is the rule here? And so being able to pass the test with those kind of questions and know where to find the answers, I think could really help prepare our future social workers. And then the third thing being that we're hoping to adjust our supervision hour requirement to 3,000 hours, but have more clear supervision standards. So right now, you pretty much, and I think I might be getting ahead of myself to another slide, but you pretty much have, you have to find a fully licensed social worker, a master social worker, and you meet with them for an hour a week. They sign off on all your work hours, and that's kind of that. I think, luckily we have some amazing supervisors in Michigan who stay up to date on supervision, like strategy and concepts, and they do really, really great mentoring. I know I I think about the supervisors that I had. I mean, I still sometimes think like, oh, what would they tell me to do? And so again, that is what makes a good social worker, and not the ability to pass this exam. Um, and so the hope would be that we'd get a little bit more in line with other states, hours wise. 4,000 hours is more than any other state requires. Um, and give a little bit more context to what supervision should look like. Not everybody is so lucky to have really great supervision, so we're hoping that we can kind of find that balance uh there. And then the only thing that we're hoping will be new this year in our initiative is we're looking at extending limited license renewals. So some big feedback that we chewed on last year was once our bills do get all the way through, it'll be about 18 months before they're implemented. And so we have social workers now who like are leaving the field because they've run out of renewals. And so we're hoping that we're not taking our eye off the prize, but we do want to find a way to help now, and not just help social workers, um, even though that's enough, help our communities that, are losing their therapist, they're losing their school social worker, they're losing their medical social worker. Like these are people um, who literally I hear from them weekly. They're moving, they're getting jobs in other fields. So at this exact moment in time, these bills don't have new numbers. And so definitely keep an eye on the emails that come through from Dana, our Director of Policy and Advocacy. For when they are introduced, we will definitely want your support in talking to your legislators about why, assuming you're supportive, why you support and why it's important. Because we're feeling optimistic for the future in this realm. And then just to kind of give some context, I think I'm gonna kind of read what the colors stand for because it didn't, I know it doesn't look perfect, but we're not the only state that has been looking at licensure and that has been looking specifically at the exam. So our two states, Illinois and Minnesota, that are purple, those two states actually already have alternative clinical pathways. So they have had pathways for a couple of years now, and they're already seeing that they have more folks in the profession. Their workforce shortages are getting better. And so they're really the kind of the gold star of what is possible. Their strategy has included, I believe in both states, you have to fail the exam before you can take a different pathway. And so what we're hoping to accomplish is going to look a little different, but I think it's, yay for them. I think they're great examples. And then the yellow states like us, New York, Massachusetts, North Carolina, Oregon, Washington, they are all similarly fighting the good fight, and they have either a work group formed or legislation that's been introduced, and they're working on their own initiatives at that level. The dark green, Utah and Colorado, they don't have the lower level exams. So while they still require the clinical ASWB exam, those two states have done away with like bachelor's or the general master's exam. And then the light green, California, Wyoming, and Nebraska, Louisiana, Florida. My like childhood government teacher, I think, would be proud of me right now, that I'm nailing the state things, but they don't have those exams. So while the darker green did that legislatively, these other states just didn't require them. And then our friends in North Dakota, they have their licensing board, they have a waiver. So they their board acts a little bit differently. Our social work board doesn't really have that power at this time. But I think it's really interesting to think about that, to see that that's how they're tackling it, that, folks who are who kind of want to plead their case can do so and then get that requirement waived. Come on. Oops. Okay, so transitioning a little bit over to talk about supervision. So again, for those of us who haven't had to do it in a minute, the current supervision kind of looks like fully licensed master social worker, work for 4,000 hours. That's all that really is like required. I think ethically, most of us, if we're going to take a limited licensed person under us, we're going to put a little bit more energy into it than that. But technically, that's all that you need. We're hoping that we will, like I said, go to 3,000 hours, which is more aligned with all the other states, and then we'll strengthen supervision standards. Come on. Set the next, yeah. So where we're at with this initiative, in short, our Workforce and Working Conditions Committee, which meets actually this coming Thursday, so the fourth Thursday of the month, we have a subcommittee as part of that group that's looking at supervision. A lot of supervisors are part of that conversation. And within that group, we've been putting together surveys. We're hoping to kind of start out by just getting a better pulse on what is going on, like what are people's experiences. The first survey that we're honing in on will be surveying supervisors. So the idea of like questions like, do you charge for supervision? What do you do in a typical supervision? Are you usually working with somebody who works for you at your agency? Or, a lot of people, it's part of their business plan to offer supervision. So we want to just get a better idea of, in general, what is the landscape right now? Like I said, I think most social workers take that responsibility more seriously than that last slide kind of showed, right? Just kind of signing off on paperwork, but we want to know, we want to see. And so if you want to help contribute to that conversation in general and the survey, join us at our Workforce Working Conditions Committee. Or towards the end of this presentation, and I'll make sure it goes in the chat too. You can always email me if you have thoughts or ideas. I'm always happy to chat offline with members. I did, to kind of tee up our initiatives, I have done a large kind of review of what is going on across the country with supervision standards. I was surprised. I eventually am going to stop being surprised about things that are going on in other states, because I was a clinical social worker that never really thought about it before. But there's a lot out there, and I remember when we first started talking about supervision standards, I remember feeling like, yeah, but like, really, like, how could we really like do that, right? And then look at all these states that have all sorts of requirements. IT kind of stands for, on this list while you're looking, it stands for initial training. So like, you've got like Florida. Their law just says, if you're going to provide supervision, you have to have an initial training in supervision. I mean, look at Texas. Texas has a similar, it's only an initial training, but it's 40 hours. Like, that's significant. Then there's states that also, in addition to some type of initial training, they're hoping for folks to continue their education on it, right? So CE/renewal stands for like every renewal cycle. If you're going to be a supervisor in these states, you have to have so many continuing education on supervision. So again, after I kind of saw that, I thought, well, gosh, like, I think this idea again of like less hours, but elevating what you're doing in those hours, I think is totally feasible and kind of exciting. And then another element of my work has been looking at ethical violations. So we are in a really unique position in Michigan because when we formally got licensed in 2004, 2005, we had a ton of social workers, about a third of our workforce now, who were grandparented in, right? They didn't do like the supervision, they didn't do the test, they just became licensed, right? And um, not very many states have that really because we were a little bit on the later end. And so we have this opportunity to say, okay, a big element of folks who are supportive of the ASWB exam is this worry that, you know, we can't like water down what it takes to be a licensed social worker. We are working with really vulnerable populations. We need to have the standard way of making sure that the folks that we're letting into our profession are people who are going to be ethical. They're going to, you know, take good care of their clients. And so we got to talking about how, you know, it's interesting because we have this third of our social work workforce that didn't take the exam, that didn't, you know, that was grandparented in. And so it would be curious to see how much percentage of ethical violations that are happening by folks who were grandparented in, who didn't pass the ASWB exam, right? Because if the ASWB exam is doing this great job of being this like safeguard or gatekeeper of our profession, you would think that a higher proportion of ethical violations would be committed by folks who didn't pass the ASWB exam, right? So, the ethical violations are brought to the Board of Social Work at their meetings. It's all public. So I was able to go from 2021 to 2023. I'm working on getting the information from a few years prior to that, and then now I need to kind of go back and catch up on 2024, honestly. But from that window, we had 93 ethical violations by fully licensed social workers. 37 of them were grandparented in, therefore did not take the ASWB exam. And so with that, we can see that 61% of violations were reported by folks who have passed the ASWB exam. And so that's right about, I mean, that shows, I mean, it's not, you know, always this equals that, but it does support the idea that the exam is at best not doing anything. It's not making folks more ethical. Maybe it's not making them less, you know, I don't want to go that far. I passed it, right? So I'm not trying to say that, but it's not doing this like amazing job at safeguarding. And in looking at this, obviously I'm looking at way more than just this information. And so watch for that larger kind of write up on this. But I also just kind of want to acknowledge that I noticed from reading the details on a lot of things that are wild to know have happened. But a lot of times it's folks who are isolated, right? And that goes back to supervision, right? It's, you know, we're talking about strengthening standards for licensed or pre-licensed folks, but we need it all the time. Maybe not formal, you know, paid for supervision for our entire careers, but you know, it's isolation, it's not having good mentors, it's not being surrounded by good you know, having good work-life balance because we have so many clients or so many patients or whatever. Like those are the things that are I brought that kind of bias to this information, and the information is validating that. Like a lot of these folks were people who just, you know, didn't ask for help, didn't have somebody to go, well, are you sure? Like, you should get your own phone number for your private practice or whatever the thing is, right? Like it's a slippery slope sometimes. So yeah, that is more to come on that. But I think for the purpose of this presentation, that was a big takeaway. Oops, come on. And then the social work compact. So, for anybody who is not familiar with the compact, the social work compact is something that essentially would bring together the states that pass it, so that if you're licensed, for example, in Washington, you could apply for the social work compact license. And then in all the other states that are dark blue, once this is all finalized, you'd be able to be like licensed in those states. I'll just kind of preface that we're not currently part of the compact. As you can see, all the gray states are states that are not working on the compact. The light blue have legislation pending. Um, uh, a major reason that a lot of states are pausing on participating in the compact at this point is because it does require the ASWB exam. So my understanding would be that if we were to remove our ASWB exam and then join the compact, or any state that did that, it would almost be like, you just couldn't be part of the compact if you didn't pass the exam, but you'd like the state licensure would be whatever it is. And so we're watching closely, right? Like because we're not part of the compact, we are not part of the conversation about what ultimately is finalized, which is the point in the process that they're at right now. But we are, listening, and we're not able to, like I said, we don't have like a vote, but we are able to be part of like public comment in these meetings about the compact. And we're hoping that some of these states that have already passed it will advocate that there be a path forward as part of the compact. It does not require the exam. It feels a little bit like the compact could almost be like the Trojan horse to keep the ASWB exam relevant and pumping money, because interstate licensure is important, and it can't be ignored in a conversation about the future of our profession, right? Like um telehealth doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and interstate licensure would continue to make telehealth business good. The ability to see clients across states would be really exciting. And I think, instead of right now, social workers who just kind of have to get licensed in all these different states, and we have enough similarities in licensure and stuff that a lot of times that's working fine. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I think there's also potential trouble, right? Like if you're licensed in the state of Michigan, you're following Michigan law with clients in Michigan. But it's unclear, like, say you are all then working with somebody in a state that has like different laws on like abortion access, or different laws related to conversion therapy. Like there are these what can feel like ethical things to some of us that you would be held accountable to that state's laws. And so I think there's hesitation because of the exam requirement, but I think it's good. I think sometimes we can, when we think about the future, right? Like we can jump into something and be like, this is so important and we need to do this. And I think it's good that we have this opportunity to kind of step back and pause and watch it come together. And then, our hope is certainly that after we see the licensure modernization that we're working on past the finish line, we dive into compact possibilities. my clinical hat version of me is excited at that idea, right? Like I get it. I understand why it's really important to a lot of our social workers. Let's see. Oops. Yeah, and then so ways to get involved, right? I mentioned the Workforce and Working Conditions Committee. Um, I mentioned it related to the subgroup related to supervision, but we also have a subgroup on compensation. And then I think the third one is I want to say they're working on like a unionization toolkit. And so we always meet as a larger group once a month and we talk about, what's going on this coming week. We're going to have a presentation that is going to be really good. So there's a lot of like bigger picture conversation. And then we spend about a half an hour of the hour working in our subcommittees. And so I know the compensation group is also really off to the races and they're working on a like living, breathing survey of compensation across the state so that in the end um it will stay live. And so when you're looking at getting a new job or you're looking at negotiating at your current job, you can kind of go in there and see like what are other people making, what are the benefit packages like, and so really bringing that kind of to everybody so that everybody can access it is gonna be cool. So we'd love to have you. And um I kind of mentioned, I don't Danielle will have to correct me when we come back, but there's always a course supervision training on the calendar. I don't know if it's open right now, but at the time being, that is kind of the training that is recommended in Michigan for supervision. I did it when I worked at St. Joe's. They sent me to do that. It's good. It's really good. It gives a lot of um the stuff that is important, right? Like, well, duh. But it helps you kind of know the licensure process, so that you can help your limited licensed folks navigate that. And it also, I mean, it obviously talks about like ethics and how to navigate those kind of conversations. And so I definitely recommend it, not just because I'm here working for NASW, I did it myself. And it's kind of the standard that we have right now, and it's definitely going to be part of ongoing conversations as we work on supervision standards. Like I said, watch for legislative initiatives as they come up this year. Um, I know Dana usually sends emails and all of that. So if if time flies and things kind of get away from you from checking, just wait for the emails. We'll be tapping y'all for sure when the time comes with our new bills. I have been working on an op-ed series. I hope you guys have seen those. We're hoping that we can continue to give a voice to folks who've been impacted by the ASWB exam and the barriers to licensure. So far, the folks that I've interviewed, I think we had a social worker who got connected with me in process of writing his op-ed. He passed the exam. He's fully licensed now, so that's kind of powerful, I think. And then I've had a couple of social workers who are well, definitely I'm remembering one of my people. I had she's not English is not her first language, and so that has been a big barrier for her with the exam, which I didn't even say out loud when we were talking about the exam. That something I didn't know is that they do not offer the exam in any other language, which doesn't feel like it should be legal. But anyway, so yeah, so it's not just limited license folks who are struggling to pass the exam who have something to say about the importance of our initiatives and bringing better equity to our licensure process. So if you've been touched in any way, maybe it's, you know, you have trouble hiring because folks keep losing their license or, whatever, reach out to me. I'm happy to either ask you some questions and put together the op-ed myself or support you writing it and then we share it mostly within our social work community. I don't think we've done any pumped any out further, but nothing, I mean, I wish we could wave a magic wand and help folks today, right now, be fully licensed. But I have gotten it, it means a lot to know that sharing your story impacts people. You know, I get every time I pump out an op-ed, I get a lot of emails of like, I read the op-ed on Facebook or whatever, and I thought it was just me, or this has really helped me realize I'm not alone, or it it meant a lot to hear that other people, you know, struggle with their like sense of identity when they can't pass this exam. And so if for no other reason, I am hoping it's building some community there. And then the supervision survey coming soon. If you're somebody who offers supervision, in particular, right now we're focusing on surveying supervisors, but we'd love to hear, you know, from you. I'd love for you to do the survey when it comes out, so watch for that. We want as many voices as we can have as we are kind of collecting our data to know where do we go with this, right? We want to bring supervision up to some standards. Oops. Um, okay, so that left us about 12 minutes. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to try to get our word cloud again. But yeah, if anybody has any questions or thoughts, love to hear them.
And Jordan, while you were talking, I did put in links to the Working Conditions and Workforce Committee page and your contact information, as well as the February cohort for the certificate in core supervision. We still have a few spaces available in that February cohort.
Awesome, thank you. I had meant to check in with you on that when I put it in my presentation, so I'm glad that I was sort of remembering correctly that you've got one right now. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions for us? Me?
Jordan, I was gonna say that this just seems like a never-ending ongoing problem that we've been talking about forever, and it just seems like I can probably imagine we'll be talking about it again this time next year. I don't know, I mean, it's not something that I'm retired and, I've had my license for 40+ years, but I just look at the new crop of social workers coming on and all the hoops that they're having to go through or will have to go through. And I don't know, I really
Yeah.
don't know what the ultimate answer is. It just would seem like there needs to be a more definitive answer, more aggressive approach needs to be taken.
Yeah, I can definitely kind of empathize with that. I don't know if empathize is even the right word, but it feels it does feel never ending. And I think for me at least, it's really hopeful to see other states that have succeeded, right? That they haven't just succeeded in passing legislation, they have more social workers now. Like it's worked, which is comforting. But I think, you know, we have to do something, and it does feel sometimes like what we're doing maybe isn't enough, or the obstacles that we're faced with are just keep coming. And so hopefully our social workers who are limited licensed at least feel like we're fighting for them, though that feels kind of empty sometimes.
Well, you would think as social workers, we're supposed to know how to negotiate obstacles and barriers, the issues and problems that we could figure this issue or problem out on a more satisfactory level.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're not good at like in general, not necessarily this, but we're not always good at like helping ourselves, you know? I think um we fight very fiercely for our people. Uh but sometimes we're not fighting as well for ourselves or um our colleagues. I think I'm so close. Oh yeah, I'm so close. Here we go. All right. I'm so close to sharing this. I'm so excited because this is all right. Come on. Ta-da. I hope that worked. If not, I give I give up. So yeah, I don't mean to steal the thunder of our of the conversation we were having. I just as I pulled this up, I'm excited for us to all look at it as we kind of keep talking. But I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts related to what we were just saying, that like it can feel like we're not doing enough or we're not doing it fast enough or hard enough. I don't know that there's like like a a good answer to that, but I think it's a fair way to feel about it.
Jordan, a question came to me about if there is a need for more supervisors in the state.
I think that's an awesome question. I think my like gut reaction is yes, but that is just coming from kind of little pieces that my brain are pulling from different files in my head. I don't know if we really even know how many supervisors there are, right? I think obviously NASW knows how many, I'm sure we know how many core supervisors there are. I know there's like a whole part of our website that has those folks, but um, I mean, I know my supervision was amazing, but it was just fully licensed people that worked near me that gave me an hour of their time, you know? And so I think, and I'm just, this is just me being whatever this isn't coming from like a data set I have, but like, I think a lot of people are getting supervision that way. And I think that I hope that if we're able to kind of elevate our standards a little bit, it'll be more like other states, like I said, like they have like a whole list, like these are the supervisors you can get supervision from because they've done their things and we know what they're going to offer. And then maybe people will get closer to similar experiences in supervision. I ended up having a great experience, but I think I worked for like 4 months without any supervision because I was told I would get it and I didn't, and nobody would give it to me. And that's a really, I mean, I'm kind of going off topic here, but like that's a really hard position to be in as a like new social worker, to have to be like, hello, you said you would give this to me when you hired me and we're all drowning, so nobody can give it to me. And so we don't know how many supervisors we have in Michigan, but it feels like we probably could use more to try to get back to your question.
What if someone is unsure if they are a good fit for providing supervision, and what would be your suggestions for exploring that fit?
I love that. My first thought when you said that was, if you're asking that, you're probably going to do a great job giving supervision because you care about being a good fit and you're curious about that. And so I think the answer to that internal question would be to potentially do the course supervision, or I know there are resources out there, and maybe that's a good to do for me after this, to kind of pull them together in one place. But you know coming up with that, having a list of the important things that I'm pretty sure it's an NASW resource, of like what should be covered in supervision, and for me at least, when I've offered supervision, it is obviously not the same as like a clinical client. But you do want to like have like a little bit of a personality fit, I think, to do a good job. And so potentially meeting with somebody who wants to have supervision from you and just see how that fit is, and then see like how much, I've supervised social workers who are so organized, they come with that list and they're like, these are the things that we need to cover. I'm like, let's do it. And that's a good fit for me. But somebody who comes to me and maybe isn't as organized, and I know I maybe don't have as much time to be organized, that's not a great fit for me. So, being curious about that, doing some training, doing some of the homework before you're going to do supervision, but then just, using our clinical skills, I think, to see if it's a good fit. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's what comes to mind.
It's almost like a job interview where the supervisor's interviewing the prospective client and the client is interviewing the prospective supervisor to see if you are or if you're not a good fit for one another and go from there.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. And I think that's a good way to look at it too. And it's a good thing for like a limited license folks, I think, to hear, because, it's easier said than, it's easier said than done to be like, you're hiring us, so make sure that we're a good fit for you. Cause, folks need supervision and sometimes they just have to take what they can get. But especially if they're paying us, we are working sort of for them. And so they have a right to feel like they're comfortable with us too, when we're in that role. So I like that kind of looking at it that way. Good job, interview. It's got to work on both sides.
And they should interview more than one supervisor so they can have a choice and figure out which of the ones they interview are or aren't, right or not right for them to make a good choice.
Totally. Totally agree. Well, gosh, I feel like this has been, this last few minutes have been such great conversation. And I appreciate everybody jumping in and hopefully not judging me too hard for my tech issues. I think it keeps me humble to have to do anything techie. But it was so, I hope it was useful. I really mean it. Email me if I don't know, you have any other thoughts or questions, or if you want to get involved with any of it but don't really remember what we said to do or whatever. I'm happy to talk offline with anybody who wants to talk about these things or anything workforce related.
Thank you so much, Jordan.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks, everybody.
This was great. I loved the information, the conversation. It was great.
Good. Yay. And we finally did it.
Yes, yes. Thank you, everyone, for your flexibility on the reschedule. We appreciate it. I did put a link to the evaluation in the chat section. I will also send everyone a post-event email later today. I'll include that evaluation link. I'll also put Jordan's contact information in there and the links we talked about, like to the workforce committee and some upcoming courses and other resources that are would be helpful when talking about supervision or licensure. Thank you all again for joining us today. We hope you stay warm and we look forward to seeing you at the next event or committee meeting.
Everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.